Introduction. The mysterious signal. It was a normal day on Earth, with the sun shining brightly over the cities and the world going about its business as usual. People were busy with their lives, working, studying, and enjoying the small things that made life worth living. There were no signs of any great disturbance. However, deep in space, a strange event was unfolding, an event that would soon change the fate of humanity forever. On the edge of the solar system, a powerful radio signal was traveling through the darkness of space. It was faint at first, barely detectable by the instruments of Earth's most advanced space observatories. Scientists noticed the signal, but many dismissed it as nothing more than space noise, an insignificant blip in the vast emptiness of the universe. It was just another piece of static, they thought. A few unusual signals had been detected before, but none of them had amounted to anything. Yet, as the days went by, something started to change. The signal grew stronger, clearer, and more persistent. It wasn't like anything the scientists had seen before. It was structured, organized, like a message sent with intent. It was no longer just a random noise, but something designed to communicate. And that's when the worry began to set in. The signal was coming from beyond the known stars, from a point in space that was too far to be easily reached. But what was even more disturbing was its content. After careful analysis, experts discovered a chilling pattern in the signal. Hidden within its chaotic bursts was a message, one that spoke of a war, a destruction that had already ravaged the sender's world. The message was short, but its meaning was clear. The distress call wasn't a simple cry for help. It was a warning. The message read, "We are the last survivors. They are coming. Earth, you are next." The scientists were stunned. They had always believed that life existed elsewhere in the universe, but this was different. This wasn't a peaceful communication or a greeting from a distant civilization. This was a message from someone, or something, that had survived an attack. And now it was seeking help from humanity. The news of the signal spread quickly, first to the scientific community, and then to the military and government officials. Panic slowly started to creep in. The nature of the message was too specific, too urgent, to ignore. Many dismissed the idea as a hoax, a prank by some overzealous alien enthusiasts. But some, especially those in the highest levels of power, were not so sure. As more data poured in, the experts realized something terrifying. The signal wasn't just a warning. It was a distress signal sent from a species that had already fallen to a powerful enemy. And the enemy, the ones who had destroyed their world, was now headed straight for Earth. The aliens responsible were not merciful. They did not negotiate. They simply took what they wanted, and they destroyed everything in their path. No one knew how advanced they were, but one thing was certain. The universe had never seen a force as ruthless as this. Military leaders scrambled to assess the threat. The world's most powerful armies began working together to analyze the information. Satellites scanned the sky for any sign of the approaching invaders. But all they found was silence. The enemy was coming, but they hadn't yet arrived. The countdown had begun, and the world's fate rested in the balance. The governments of Earth were torn. Some believed that humanity should prepare for the worst, while others thought it was better to wait and see. After all, no one had ever seen these invaders up close. They might never even make it to Earth. Yet, with every passing hour, the fear grew. What if the signal was real? What if this was humanity's last chance to prepare? If they didn't act now, it might be too late. The United Nations called an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Scientists, military officials, and diplomats from around the world gathered in secret, ready to discuss how they would deal with the potential threat. The air was thick with tension, the room filled with whispers of uncertainty and fear. Some felt that Earth's defenses were strong enough to withstand any invader. But others feared that humanity was ill-prepared for a battle against such a powerful force. Suddenly, a report came in that caused everyone in the room to freeze. A new signal had been detected. It was closer now, moving toward Earth faster than expected. The terrifying reality began to sink in. The enemy was already on their way, and there was no time left for second guesses. The countdown was no longer hypothetical, it was real. The question now was not if the aliens would arrive, but when. The room fell silent, each person staring at the screen in front of them, the words of the distress call echoing in their minds. Earth, you are next. Humanity's quiet world had just been shaken by the harsh reality of what lay beyond the stars. The signal had arrived, and with it came a new era for Earth, one filled with uncertainty, fear, and a desperate need for survival. The question now was whether humanity would be strong enough to fight back, or whether they would fall, just like those who had sent the warning. As the signal continued to grow louder, humanity's world would never be the same again. The call had been heard, and now, humanity's fury would be the only hope for survival. The decision to act. As the days passed and the urgency of the signal grew, the leaders of Earth were faced with an impossible decision. The military forces were already on high alert, scanning the skies, ready to react, but they had no clear understanding of the enemy. The distress signal was their only clue, and it was unclear whether they were dealing with a rogue group, a full-scale alien invasion, or something entirely different. The entire world seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the first signs of the invaders' arrival. In the shadow of this uncertainty, a global summit was called. World leaders, generals, scientists, and military strategists gathered in a secure location, far from the chaos of the cities, where they could discuss their response. The room was tense as every nation prepared to make decisions that would affect not only their own survival, but the survival of the entire human race. "We cannot sit idly by and wait for them to arrive," said General Mitchell, one of the most respected military leaders on Earth. His voice was firm, though his eyes betrayed a hint of fear. "This enemy will not show mercy. We must act now, or we risk everything." His words echoed through the room, but not everyone agreed with his stance. Some leaders were more cautious, hesitant to commit their forces without knowing more about the alien threat. "We don't even know what we're dealing with yet," said President Chen of the Chinese Federation. "How can we prepare for something we can't even identify? What if this is a misunderstanding, or worse, a trap?" The debate raged on for hours. The fear of the unknown weighed heavily on everyone. Should they follow General Mitchell's advice and prepare for war? Or should they take a more measured approach, hoping that the aliens would either leave them alone or not be as dangerous as feared? In the end, it was a series of classified reports that shifted the tide. Military satellites picked up an anomaly on the farthest reaches of Earth's solar system. Massive ships, far too large to be human-made, were closing in on their position. These ships were moving fast, faster than anything humanity had ever seen, and they were coming straight for Earth. A voice came over the speakers, cutting through the noise of the room. "This is not a drill. We've just confirmed the presence of hostile ships. They are approaching at an alarming rate. We estimate they'll be within firing range in less than 72 hours. The room fell silent. The reality was undeniable. The aliens were not a rumor. They were not a distant threat. They were coming. And soon. President Chen's face turned pale. I don't think we have a choice anymore. We have to prepare for war." The room erupted into discussion once more. This time, however, the tone had shifted. There were no more debates about whether or not to act. The question now was how. There were not enough human ships to mount a significant defense, and even if there were, humanity's technology was primitive compared to the alien ships that were closing in. They were vastly outmatched. General Mitchell stood up, his face determined. "We may not have the resources, but we have something they don't have. The will to fight. We are humanity. We've survived countless hardships. We survived Earth's own wars, natural disasters, and our own flaws. We can survive this, but we have to stand together." There was a long pause before one of the diplomats spoke up. "But how? How do we fight an enemy we don't understand? General Mitchell's eyes narrowed. We don't need to understand them. We need to make them understand us. We'd fight for our survival. And we fight like humanity has always fought, together, united. A plan was quickly formed. Earth's top military leaders began working on a strategy, pooling their resources and coordinating with the world's most advanced technological minds. The United Nations declared a global state of emergency, and every nation on Earth began preparing for what was sure to be humanity's greatest battle. The world had no choice but to unite in the face of this unprecedented threat. Meanwhile, the distress signal continued to grow stronger, its message becoming clearer with every passing hour. The voice from the other side of the galaxy cried out in desperation, warning of the horrors they had witnessed and begging humanity to prepare. But despite the warnings, humanity had no way of knowing exactly what awaited them. As military forces scrambled to prepare, the leaders of Earth sent a message of their own, a message broadcasted across the universe. It was a message of defiance, of unity, and of strength. "We hear your call," the message said, "and we will not fall. Humanity will stand." The countdown had begun. Humanity's fate rested in their hands, and the decisions made in these final moments would decide whether Earth would fall to the invaders or rise to defend itself. The world was ready for whatever came next, but would it be enough? As the alien ships drew closer, the true test was about to begin. The rising tension. As the alien fleet drew nearer, the tension on Earth grew unbearable. In every corner of the globe, people watched the sky, their eyes filled with fear, uncertainty, and an unspoken hope that somehow the invaders might change their course. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. Time was running out. The ships were approaching, and the world was unprepared for the war that loomed ahead. Across military bases, advanced technologies were rushed into production, and defensive strategies were hastily crafted. The largest fleets of human ships ever assembled were being readied for battle. Earth's best pilots and engineers scrambled to fine-tune the new weapons developed in response to the alien threat. Yet, despite all these efforts, the fear remained. What if it wasn't enough? What if humanity wasn't ready for the scale of the war they were about to face? In the midst of the mounting chaos, global leaders held another emergency meeting. The situation was dire. It wasn't just the alien fleet approaching. It was the way they moved. Human satellites had been tracking them for days, and it was clear that the aliens didn't just travel in a fleet of ships. They were organized, precise, and strategic, unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Every move they made suggested a long history of conquest, of civilizations falling one after another under their powerful might. The scientists who had been analyzing the signals were now certain that the invaders were far beyond anything Earth could imagine. These were not simple explorers or curious beings. They were conquerors, and Earth was their next target. Dr. Clara Johansson, a leading scientist working with the military, stood before the room of anxious leaders. "The aliens are organized. We are not facing random invaders. They've taken over entire planets. We're next. Their technology is far superior to ours, and we are completely outmatched." She paused, glancing at the digital map on the screen showing the alien fleet's movement toward Earth. "Our only advantage is that we don't know everything about them yet. We have time, but not much." General Mitchell, always the optimist, wasn't ready to give in. "Then we use that time wisely. We fight. We may be outmatched, but we won't go down without a fight." He turned toward the massive screen showing the alien fleet's size, a vast array of ships, each one larger and more terrifying than any military vessel Earth had ever produced. The ships gleamed in the cold light of space, like a storm gathering on the horizon. But there was something different about the alien ships. Their design wasn't like anything humanity had ever seen. They were sleek, with smooth surfaces and weapons that seemed to glow with an unnatural energy. Their sheer size and the speed at which they traveled made it clear they were no ordinary invaders. The scientists could barely comprehend the technology behind these ships, let alone how to defend against them. As the alien fleet moved closer, humanity's military strategists scrambled to come up with a plan. In every major military facility, teams worked around the clock to fortify Earth's defenses, constructing massive laser arrays, installing new missile systems, and preparing for the worst-case scenario. But the more they worked, the more they realized how inadequate their weapons were compared to the alien technology. The aliens could decimate Earth's defenses with ease. Humanity's only hope lay in the element of surprise and the desperate courage of its people. The world held its breath as the first signs of the alien arrival appeared. A massive ship, the size of a city, broke through the edge of the solar system. It was not the first of many, but the moment it entered Earth's atmosphere, the world knew that the war had begun. There was a collective gasp as the alien ship hovered over Earth, casting a shadow that stretched across entire countries. For a moment, there was silence. Then came the broadcast, the message from the alien leader. The voice was cold, emotionless, and ancient. It echoed through every communication device on Earth, from television screens to phones to loudspeakers in the streets. This world will be ours, just like all the others. Submit to us, and you may live. Resist, and your planet will burn. We are the Vorians, and your end is inevitable. The broadcast ended, but the message remained, hanging in the air like a heavy fog. The world was paralyzed with fear. Some nations, already shaken by the aliens' words, debated surrender, hoping to avoid destruction. But others, particularly the leaders of the free world, stood firm. There would be no surrender. Humanity would fight. In the midst of this turmoil, General Mitchell addressed the world through a live broadcast. We will not give up. We will fight with every last breath. The Vorians think they can break us, but they have underestimated one thing: the power of humanity's will. We will fight to protect our homes, our families, and our planet. The broadcast was brief, but it ignited a fire in the hearts of people across the globe. They were scared, yes, but they were also angry. Angry that an enemy had come to their world, threatening everything they held dear. The world's leaders might be divided, but the people were united by one undeniable truth: Earth would not fall without a fight. As the alien ships loomed larger in the sky, humanity's response began to take shape. People from every nation, every corner of the Earth, began to stand together. The soldiers were ready. The civilians were ready. Humanity's rage had been awakened, and it would not be easily extinguished. The final battle for Earth was approaching, and as the alien forces closed in, the fate of humanity would be decided by their courage, their unity, and their will to survive. First contact. The tension on Earth reached its peak as the first of the alien ships descended into Earth's atmosphere. It was like nothing anyone had ever seen. Massive, dark, and ominous. The sky seemed to tremble with its presence. The ship hovered above the planet, casting a shadow over the land below, as if it were a predator waiting for its prey to make a move. Humanity, now fully aware that the invaders had arrived, stood frozen in awe and fear. Military forces were on high alert, but the truth remained clear: nothing could compare to the power that the aliens possessed. Earth's weapons, no matter how advanced, seemed insignificant compared to the might of the alien ship. And yet, humanity had no choice but to face them head-on. Inside the military command centers, generals and advisors frantically tried to devise a plan. They had been preparing for this moment for weeks, but now that the time had come, they realized how little they truly understood about the alien force they were facing. How could they fight something so advanced? How could they stand against an enemy that seemed invincible? But there was one thing they knew for certain. They had to try. They couldn't just sit back and surrender. The idea of letting the aliens take Earth was unthinkable. They were humanity's last hope for survival. Suddenly, the alien ship emitted a pulse of energy, filling the sky with an eerie glow. It was not an attack. It was a signal, a sign that the invaders were ready to communicate. Military forces hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Was this the beginning of an invasion, or was it simply a form of intimidation? Without warning, a voice boomed through every speaker across the planet. It was cold, methodical, and unmistakably alien. The words cut through the air, echoing in every home, every building, and every corner of Earth. "This is your final warning," the alien leader's voice said. "We are the Vorians, conquerors of countless worlds. You are weak, divided, and insignificant. Your planet will belong to us. If you resist, you will be annihilated." The message was brief, but it left humanity in shock. There was no negotiation, no attempt at peaceful communication. The aliens were here to conquer, and they would show no mercy. Humanity had no choice but to face them in battle. But then, something unexpected happened. As the alien broadcast ended, a voice cut through the static. It was the voice of humanity's leader, General Mitchell. His message was broadcast across every communication device, from the news to social media, in response to the Vorians' threat. "We hear your words," General Mitchell's voice echoed. "And we will not bow to fear. We will fight for our homes, our families, and our future. You may think we are weak, but you have underestimated humanity. We will not go down without a fight." His message was a spark that lit a fire in the hearts of people around the world. Across cities, countries, and continents, people stood together. Soldiers, civilians, scientists, every single person on Earth now had a common enemy. The message was clear. Humanity was ready to stand and fight. As the alien ship hovered above the planet, a strange feeling filled the air. It was as if both sides knew that something monumental was about to happen. The Vorians, who had conquered so many civilizations before, now faced a force unlike any they had ever encountered. The humans weren't going to surrender. They were going to fight with everything they had. General Mitchell's words echoed in the minds of every soldier preparing for battle. The alien fleet may have been powerful, but they had one thing the Vorians didn't: the fire of humanity's will. And that fire was about to be tested in ways no one could have imagined. Just as humanity was beginning to prepare itself for the inevitable battle, the alien ship began to move, slowly at first, as if testing the waters. Then, with sudden force, it released a massive blast of energy, sending shockwaves across the Earth. The blast didn't destroy cities or cause massive devastation. It was simply a warning shot, a reminder of the power the Vorians wielded. The shockwave rippled through the atmosphere, disrupting communications and electronics and throwing the planet into chaos. People screamed as the power went out in entire cities. The world seemed to go silent, as if holding its breath. But even in the face of this overwhelming force, humanity did not back down. The shockwave, though terrifying, only strengthened their resolve. They would not let the aliens have their way. In military command centers, the first orders were given to prepare the defense systems. The global military forces were ready to make their stand. They would use every weapon at their disposal to defend Earth, even if it meant risking everything. As the alien ship loomed overhead, the planet braced for the worst. But humanity had something the aliens hadn't counted on: determination. The battle for Earth had begun, and it was a battle that would define the fate of humanity for generations to come. The alien invasion was no longer just a theory or a distant nightmare. It was real. And now, the true test would begin. Would humanity rise to the challenge, or would the Vorians succeed in their conquest? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: humanity was ready to fight for its survival, no matter the cost. The human response. As the alien ships settled into orbit above Earth, the world's military leaders scrambled to organize a global defense. The Vorians had made their presence known with terrifying clarity, and humanity had no choice but to respond. The fate of Earth rested in the hands of those who were willing to fight, but the odds were overwhelmingly against them. The Vorians had already proven their technological superiority. Humanity was facing an enemy they barely understood, and there was no turning back. In every major city around the world, The streets were filled with soldiers, engineers, and civilians preparing for what was to come. People who had once lived their lives in peace were now forced to confront an unimaginable threat. Governments had enacted martial law, and the military mobilized at a speed never seen before. Every country, every nation, every individual now knew the stakes. They would either fight together or fall apart. The military leaders, including General Mitchell, had made it clear that humanity's only chance was unity. The alien ships, although hovering silently above the Earth, had made it abundantly clear they were ready for war. Humanity's options were limited, but their resolve was stronger than ever. The first step was to prepare a defense strategy using the technology they had, no matter how flawed or incomplete it might be. Dr. Clara Johansson, the lead scientist on the military project, stood in front of a massive screen in a top-secret facility. The screen was filled with data, readouts from every military base around the world, every piece of Earth's weaponry, every piece of technology humanity could use in this final stand. "We don't have much time," Dr. Johansson said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We know they have advanced energy weapons capable of disabling our ships and taking out entire cities with ease. Our primary goal is to keep them from getting to our cities and establish some form of resistance. If we're lucky, we'll catch them by surprise." General Mitchell stood by her side, staring intently at the map. "We may not be able to outgun them, but we have something they don't. We have the will to fight. We'll use every weapon we've got and keep fighting until the very end." Humanity isn't just going to roll over. Across the globe, nations were pooling their resources. The United States, the European Union, China, Russia, and even smaller nations that had long been on the periphery of global affairs now stood together. Everyone was fighting for the same goal: survival. Secret alliances were formed, military strategies drawn up, and the world's resources were dedicated to a single purpose: hold the line against the invaders. Despite humanity's resolve, it was clear that Earth's defenses were far from adequate. The first wave of alien ships began moving closer, their weapons systems scanning the planet's surface. At the same time, a small team of military and scientific experts worked feverishly on a secret project, something that could shift the balance of power, even if only slightly. The weapon, an experimental piece of technology developed from the data sent in the distress signal, was humanity's last hope. It was designed to temporarily disable the alien ship's energy shields, giving Earth's forces a chance to strike back. The plan was dangerous. The weapon had never been tested in real combat, and there was no guarantee it would work, but it was the only option left. The soldiers selected to operate the weapon were trained in secrecy, prepared to sacrifice everything for the good of Earth. Their mission was clear: infiltrate the heart of the alien fleet, deploy the weapon, and pray it was enough to make a difference. The world's eyes were fixed on the skies as the first of Earth's space fleets launched into orbit. These ships, built with the best technology humanity had at its disposal, were barely a match for the alien fleet. They were small, agile, and heavily armed, but they were no match for the sheer size and power of the Vorian ships. Nevertheless, they represented humanity's best chance at survival. Every soldier on board knew they had one purpose: to buy time for the rest of humanity. The war began with a terrifying bang. The alien ships fired their first shots, beams of energy that cut through Earth's atmosphere like knives through butter. The first city was struck. London, the heart of Europe, was hit with a devastating beam that left a crater where once stood a bustling metropolis. The shockwaves were felt across the planet, and the world recoiled in horror. But even as the dust settled, the people of Earth began to fight back. The global military forces retaliated, launching a full-scale counteroffensive. Humanity's ships fired missiles and energy blasts, but the alien shields effortlessly absorbed the attacks. The first wave of battle had been a failure, but it was only the beginning. As more alien ships descended toward Earth, humanity's resistance grew fiercer. The strategy was simple: hold the line at all costs. Every man, woman, and child understood that their survival depended on their ability to resist. And resist they did. In every country, people began to stand up. Civilians took to the streets in defiance, rallying together, fighting back against the alien invaders. No one was sitting on the sidelines anymore. As the military forces worked to push back the alien fleet, ordinary people found ways to resist. Small bands of fighters used guerrilla tactics, sabotaging alien equipment wherever they could, slowing down their progress. Cities built underground bunkers, and some nations began evacuating their citizens into hidden safe zones. As the battle raged on, Earth's military leaders realized that the only chance they had was to strike at the heart of the alien force. The weapons might not have been powerful enough to stop the invaders, but humanity had one advantage: their resilience. The aliens thought they could break Earth, but they had underestimated the will of humanity to survive. The next phase of the war would see humanity take desperate but calculated risks. The global forces would prepare for a final push to break the aliens' hold on Earth, knowing that victory or defeat rested on their ability to use everything at their disposal to strike back. The final stand. The battle for Earth had reached its tipping point. Humanity, battered and bruised, had been fighting the Vorians for weeks. Cities lay in ruins, entire regions were left unrecognizable, and countless lives had been lost. Yet through it all, Earth's resilience had not faltered. Every time the aliens thought they had broken humanity, they found that the human spirit was unyielding. The world had united in the face of annihilation, and together they had forged a resistance unlike anything the Vorians had ever seen. The Vorians, sensing the defiance in humanity's efforts, began to escalate their attacks. They unleashed devastating new weaponry, energy blasts that could level entire cities in an instant, overwhelming the last pockets of human resistance. The alien ships towered over Earth, filling the skies with their cold, metallic presence. The battle had reached its darkest hour. But even in the face of this overwhelming destruction, the will to survive burned brightly in humanity's heart. General Mitchell stood before his war room, surveying the latest reports. The alien fleet was massive, at least 10 times the size of Earth's own forces. It was clear that Earth's military could not win this war through force alone. Yet one hope remained: the experimental weapon that had been developed in secret. This weapon, if deployed correctly, could potentially disable the alien ship shields and give humanity a fighting chance. But there was a catch. The weapon had never been tested in combat, and its range was limited. To make it work, a small elite team of soldiers would need to infiltrate the heart of the Vorians' fleet, get close enough to deploy the weapon, and pray that it was enough to shift the tide of battle. It was a dangerous mission, a one-way mission for those brave enough to carry it out. "We don't have much time," General Mitchell said as he addressed his team. "The Vorians are relentless, and we've already lost too much ground. But this weapon is our last chance. We don't know if it will work, but we have no other option. I'm counting on you." The team, composed of soldiers and scientists, was ready. They knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. Earth's survival depended on their success. They would infiltrate the alien mothership, avoid detection, and deploy the weapon. It was humanity's final stand. As the team boarded their ship, the silence was deafening. Each member understood that this mission might be their last, but there was no fear, only resolve. They knew they were carrying the hopes of the entire planet with them. Meanwhile, Earth's remaining forces continued to fight on the ground, holding their positions against the alien invaders. Every city that still stood became a fortress. Civilians turned soldiers, using every scrap of knowledge and resource at their disposal to hold off the aliens. They had seen the devastation the Vorians could bring, but they were no longer afraid. The time for fear was over. They had seen too much, lost too much, and now they fought not just for survival but for a future. The final push began. Earth's military launched a series of synchronized attacks on the alien fleet's weak points. It was a desperate move, but it was the only one left. Missiles and energy blasts flew through space, targeting the alien ships in a last-ditch effort to buy time for the infiltration team. In the heart of the alien mothership, the elite team advanced, silently and methodically. They knew their mission was a suicide run, but they pushed forward with a single goal in mind: destroy the Vorians' advantage. They navigated through the mothership's maze of corridors, avoiding the Vorian security and reaching the core of the ship. With bated breath, they set the weapon in place, knowing that this could be the one thing that could change everything. Back on Earth, the battle raged on. The alien fleet responded to the attacks, firing their weapons at Earth's cities. In the chaos, people were unsure of what would come next. Would humanity's final stand be enough, or had the cost of resistance been too great? Then, as the infiltration team activated the weapon, something extraordinary happened. The alien ship shields flickered and began to fail. It was a small victory, but it was enough. Earth's forces launched a coordinated strike, hitting the now vulnerable ships with everything they had. The tide of battle shifted. The Vorians, taken by surprise, struggled to adapt. They were not accustomed to an enemy that fought back with such desperation, such strength. They had underestimated humanity, and that mistake would cost them dearly. But the victory was not without sacrifice. The infiltration team, having successfully deployed the weapon, was lost in the explosion that followed. Their bravery would be remembered, their names etched into history as the ones who gave humanity a fighting chance. The war wasn't over, but the turning point had arrived. The Vorians, now vulnerable, began to retreat. Humanity's resistance had proven too strong. Earth's forces, emboldened by the success of the weapon, pushed forward with relentless determination. The aliens, for the first time in the war, were on the defensive. As the alien fleet began to retreat into the depths of space, the survivors on Earth let out a collective sigh of relief. The battle had been long, and the cost had been immense, but humanity had won. The Earth was scared, and the war had taken a heavy toll, but Earth had proven its worth as a force to be reckoned with. Humanity had fought for its survival, and in the end, it had been enough. But even as the last of the alien ships disappeared into the void, a new message arrived, a warning from deep space. The universe was vast, and Earth had made its mark, but the challenges humanity had faced were far from over. The message was clear. Humanity had won this battle, but the war was far from over. And in the stars, there were far greater threats still waiting. The true test of humanity's strength was just beginning. The ultimate victory. As the alien fleet retreated, the Earth held its breath. The sound of victory was nearly impossible to hear through the devastation. Entire cities lay in ruins, millions of lives had been lost, and the scars of war would take generations to heal. Yet, in the midst of the destruction, there was a sense of triumph, a realization that humanity had done the impossible. Against all odds, they had fought back and won. The world's leaders, once filled with doubt, now stood united in a moment of shared triumph. The people of Earth, though weary and battered, had risen to the challenge and faced the invaders head-on. Through blood, sweat, and sacrifice, they had proved that humanity's strength wasn't just in technology or firepower. It was in the unbreakable will to survive. But even as the people celebrated their hard-won victory, the message from deep space lingered in their minds. The Vorians might have been defeated, but they were not the only threat in the universe. That final warning, the one that had echoed in the stars before the battle, spoke of an even greater danger, a force so vast and powerful that it could eclipse the terror of the Vorians. Humanity had won this war, but the universe was vast, and with every victory came new challenges. The Vorians had been the first test, but they were not the last. The message from deep space, although cryptic, made one thing clear: there were darker forces out there, waiting, watching, and biding their time. For now, humanity had a chance to rebuild. The alien threat had been defeated, but there was no time to waste. Earth's leaders, scientists, and military commanders turned their attention to the future. The world was slowly recovering from the war, and the survivors had a shared sense of purpose, to prepare for whatever was to come next. General Mitchell, who had led humanity through the darkest days, now stood on a makeshift stage, addressing the world. His face, weathered by the war, was filled with resolve as he spoke. "We've proven to the universe that humanity is not to be underestimated. We've stood together in the face of destruction, and we fought back. The Vorians may be gone, but the future is uncertain. We must be ready for what lies ahead. Our fight for survival is not over." His words rang out across the planet, a rallying cry for every person who had fought in the war and for those who would carry the torch of resistance into the future. Humanity had faced an overwhelming enemy, and they had won. But now, the true test was how they would adapt, rebuild, and unite in the face of even greater threats. The message that had arrived from deep space was decoded. It was from an advanced civilization, one that had once been a target of the Vorians. It was a warning, not just about the Vorians, but about a much more powerful force called the Serath. The Exaroth were an ancient race of conquerors, older and more powerful than the Vorians, and their forces had already begun to spread across the stars. They were a race that had wiped out entire civilizations, and they were coming for Earth. The Exaroth were unlike any enemy humanity had ever encountered. Their ships were massive, their weapons incomprehensibly powerful, and their strategy utterly ruthless. They were not like the Vorians, who at least allowed some measure of resistance. The Exaroth would not negotiate, would not offer a choice. To them, entire worlds were simply obstacles to be crushed. As the surviving leaders of Earth gathered once more, the weight of the message was clear. Humanity was far from safe. The Exaroth were coming, and Earth's brief victory against the Vorians would mean little in the face of this new, even more formidable enemy. "We have shown the universe what we are capable of," President Chen said, her voice firm. "But we cannot rest on our laurels. The Exaroth are coming, and we must be ready. Our unity, our strength will be tested again. And this time, we cannot afford to lose." The world's militaries began to mobilize again. Space agencies, scientists, and engineers worked together, pooling their resources to build new weapons, advanced defense systems, and even stronger ships. Humanity had faced destruction before, but this time, they were not going to wait. They would not be caught off guard. As Earth's defenses were strengthened and new alliances formed, the first signs of the Exaroth began to emerge on the edge of the solar system. Humanity had faced one deadly force, but now, another threat loomed large. The peaceful days were gone. The age of survival had begun, and Earth was no longer just a passive bystander in the universe. Humanity had proven it could fight. Now, it would prove it could win, again and again. The Earth was preparing for war once more, but this time, they had no illusions. The Exaroth were coming, and humanity was ready to face them, not with fear, but with the fury that had awakened during the war with the Vorians. The ultimate victory was not yet won, but humanity had learned a vital lesson. There was no challenge too great, no force too powerful to stop them from protecting their home, their future, and the very essence of what it meant to be human.